Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to another amazing episode of Unstoppable Success. I am your host, Jacqueline Strominger, and today we have an amazing guest, Blake Johnson. And as you know, on this podcast, we hear from amazing business owners, leaders, and entrepreneurs about their rise to success and how they help others also gain that unstoppable success. So let me just give you a little bit of background on Blake because he's a recognized estate planning attorney, and he's the creator of Your Family Bank Method, which is a legally focused framework that helps families build generational wealth with intention, structure, and sustainability. He has Blake's legal and business roots run really deep with degrees in finance and law, including a JD and a graduate degree on comparative law from LSU. And his work is grounded in strategy and real world insight. He has a podcast, he has workshops, and he has a great firm. And Blake equips his clients to avoid common pitfalls of wealth transfer, sidestep family conflict, and raise heirs who are prepared, not just privileged. Oh, God. And I love that. So, welcome to Unstoppable Success, Blake.
Thanks. Yeah, I had a lot of help writing that one. It turned out really good.
No, it came out really good. But that's so important. We talk about success, and actually, that's actually one of the things, that I actually want to touch on. We'll touch on your story, but having success also starts with the right grounding and of how you operate as a person. So, how so tell us about how what you're doing helps other people have success.
So it's all started from, personal experience of having to kind of go through that. Out of law school, I had two job offers, and by the time it took me to drive from Louisiana to Las Vegas, they both withdrew just based on the economy, and so kind of had to start from zero. Took me 3 months to convince my dad to hire me because he didn't want to do the training and the hard work that would go along with that. But we figured it out. We ended up being partners for a bit. And so that's a little bit of my background of getting into this. And when we started butting heads about, I wanted to grow and he was at a different point in his career where he just kind of wanted to coast. He's like, hey, just buy me out. I'm like, okay, cool. I'd love to do that, but I don't have money and I don't think a bank's going to lend to me based on where I'm at. And so he said, all right, well, I'll be your bank. You pay me back over time. And that's where this family bank concept really became real for me, was experiencing that. It was a great opportunity. I was able to pay him off over 5 years, get on my own. He loved it because he got paid over time, reduced his taxes instead of recognizing it all at once. And I didn't realize at the time, but that was the family bank. And then a couple years later, I was introduced to a guy who gave me the full version. He's like, "Oh, you've already been doing this personally. I need someone to help create the legal structure so that we can do this, for other people." And so that's what we do, is we create these opportunities to help other people who've been successful to pass their wealth on to their kids, not just giving it to them, but teaching the kids how to use it, giving them opportunities to succeed without just giving them everything.
I absolutely love that. But so when you think about that, helping kids not just be given, but so that they can actually learn to use money, how do you see that impact? What's the greatest impact with that?
I think the biggest thing you'll see is you have a far less likelihood of families going back into poverty. You've probably heard the term, shoestrings to shoestrings in 3 generations. Someone pulls themselves up by their shoestrings, does really well, becomes successful, and within 3 generations, they're back to where they were because the values and the work ethic and all the things that made them great weren't passed on. So that's what we focus on, is how can you pass those things on as opposed to just passing on money. Biggest comparison that people talk about is you have the Vanderbilts versus the Rockefellers. Similar time frames, both at one point in their lives were the most wealthy men in the world, But at the Vanderbilts, within 3 generations, had nothing left to show for it because they just spent. They were consumers. They didn't teach anything about business and how to actually provide value. Whereas the Rockefellers used trust, set things up so that way it was, here's how you become successful. Here's education pieces. Here you can borrow from the trust assets, but you're not going to get the whole thing. And they're still today one of the wealthiest families in the world because of that. And so we take those principles. It's done every day in super high net worth families. But they have a private family office, so people think that they can't do that stuff. And so we take that, we distill it down and make it so that more people can implement those tools. And we're actually working on a program that's kind of an entry level for, even if you only have a few assets, but you want to start teaching your kids these principles. Okay, we're going to have a program for that, so that way you get the entry level and then you build up to doing the full actual trust stuff.
I absolutely love that where you're giving people a starting block because wealth, like anything, it's like wealth can beget wealth, but you have to be able to have that. So